not everybody is equipped to advise you and mentor you. What
Mm,
happens is there's a lot of people out there that are regretful and they don't listen. You're going to like ask them a question like what you should do with your career. And what they're going to do is speak to a younger version of themselves. They are not going to listen to you, really hear out your situation and give you authentic, genuine advice. And I'm not saying everybody does. I'm saying that there are people out there that aren't prepared to give advice because they're so regretful. Just be careful about that. And really try to like vet out the advice and take it all with a grain of salt, I guess is my main point. And I guess also like strategically reaching out to people. Like just because somebody's a CEO of a company doesn't mean they're gonna be able to help you. Right? Like you might be better off talking to, if you're trying to be a software engineer, talking to another software engineer, right? Like someone who's
yeah.
2 steps ahead of you. Like that might be better than talking to the VP of engineering at LinkedIn. Like I don't think they're gonna have much helpful advice because they're so far removed from where you are.
What's up, everybody? You know what it is, another episode of Custom Journeys. I'm Andrew Baines. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today we got Jehron Petty, the founder of Colorstack, a great organization that's really targeting improving diversity within the tech industry, specifically focusing on increasing diversity in terms of getting more Black and Latinos into the tech industry. So really excited to talk to him today, pick his brain, and find out more about Colorstack. So Jehron, what's good, man? Thanks for taking time out to chat with me. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to get into it today.
All right, dope. Yeah, let's get into it, man. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So, you in the Bay Area, you've been busy, telling me you've been traveling and all that kind of stuff. Tell me. Actually, you told me you were actually doing like a presentation recently or a talk recently about Colorstack. Colorstack is a great organization from everything I've read, but some of our listeners may not be aware of it. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Colorstack and what you guys do?
Yeah, for sure. So the one liner is that we're a collegiate membership organization, a 501c3 for Black and Latinx computer science students. So you can think of us as a similar organization to a NSBE or a SHIP, National Society of Black Engineers and Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, but we're more focused specifically on computer science. So there have been a lot of systems and orgs and work placed in getting more Black and brown students into mechanical engineering and other hard engineering fields. But what I realized was that if you talk to students on campus, a lot of those organizations weren't really serving the computer science students, which is a major that was growing exponentially, over the past 10 years, 15 years. So started Colorstack to really support the student. We don't work with schools directly. We work with companies, but we don't really serve them as much as we serve the students that are our members. So students join Colorstack within their around their sophomore year on average. They become a member, and we really just put our resources, time, and money into helping them persist through the major and find a job post graduation. So whether that be doing events and workshops, whether that be sending a resume book to the company so they can get access to our talent, or even if it's paying for scholarships or other financial aid that students may need, we're just trying to remove those barriers so that they can more likely complete their degree and get a job full time.
Yeah, that's really needed. I'm glad that you're taking on this effort. And so you mentioned mechanical engineering. That's my major, what I majored in college. And NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers, is really key, really big. And they welcome anybody into the organization, but it's not really a strong computer science population from what I experienced previously. Yeah. So I think it's great that you're filling that need and filling that void to make sure that like the demand is being met with diverse talent. So kudos to you, bro. Kudos.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So you're still pretty young. You graduated when, 2020 or what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
2020.
So let's get into it, man. Young guy, you're really taking on this really commendable effort, trying to increase diversity within the tech industry. What kind of gave you the initial inspiration to take this on?
Yeah. So there was like there was this internal kind of motivation and passion that I had just from being on campus, and doing the work kind of myself at first. So when I was a sophomore, starting to kind of get into the groove of things, getting my internship, doing well in certain classes, I became, a TA and kind of a leader in the Black and Brown tech community at Cornell. And so I was, let's say finishing an assignment quick, taking the extra time that I had. If it was due on a Friday and I finished on a Wednesday, I would take those extra 2 nights to help other students, friends and peers that look like me, help them finish, help them get over the finish line, help them, with whatever challenges that they were having, whether it be academic or professional. So maybe it's a mock interview or a resume review. I was doing a lot of like one-on-one mentorship, and that was really fulfilling, right? Like I like to call myself like a mentor at heart. I just love helping people, especially when it comes to like helping them achieve their potential. So that was pretty dope. Like I really, really enjoyed that. And then once I ran out of like time in the day to help these students, I built a club. It was a club that existed super, super small at the time. So I joined that club and just really scaled it, right? I helped them grow from like 20 active members at least, to over 150 within the 3 years that I was in leadership and just kind of involved. So that was the initial kind of like building that organization on campus was the initial kind of spark, right? Where I was like, oh, this is fulfilling. I enjoy doing this work. But it wasn't until my senior year summer, or the summer before my senior year, where I met the founder of DevColor. I actually met him before, but we caught up actually at my internship at Google and had lunch, and I was just updating him on how things were going generally. But once I started talking about the club that I was working on at Cornell and how I was helping, Black and Brown CS students, he was the one, his name is Mackinday, he was the one that inspired me and really pushed me over the edge to think about solving that problem on a bigger scale. Right. So he said, hey, I think this is needed. I've ran DevColor for, let's call it 5 years. And a lot of people in the space are asking me and saying, okay, can DevColor move into the college space because it's needed? NSBE isn't really working for a lot of students. There needs to be another player in the space. And he had always said no, because he believes that it needs to be a different organization. You can't serve, senior engineers in industry, VPs and students with the same model. So that night, I remember it vividly. I saw the screenshots he was sending me. He was so excited. He told me about it at the lunch, like you should consider building this. But then he even texted me that night at like 10:30, still excited about it. Paragraph after paragraph, like, hey, I really think you should do this. Here's how you can get it done. What do you need from me? I want to help you figure this out. And it was just like super tactical, right? Like other people were saying, oh, this was cool. You should, make it bigger. Like they were kind of just giving these vague statements of like support, but he was the first person to like make it tactical and say, hey, this is how you can do it full time right after graduation. So the passion was already there, the interest was already there, but he made it seem possible, right? Like I could actually work on this in a full-time capacity.
Man, that's so dope. And I think that really speaks to the importance of mentorship. And it sounds like you kind of even taken on a big part of that inside your organization, like that peer mentoring component that you have. So, I think that's really key and critical. And I'm glad that conversation happened because, a lot of times you're right. Like we run into people, you tell them this great idea that you're doing and working on. You're like, oh, yeah, bro, keep at it. Like you should really try about X, Y, Z. But it's like, all right, but you got like a big brother that can kind of tell you and give you the game, like how to do it and how to be successful at it. So I think that's amazing, man. Yeah. So it sounds like you said like you would finish assignments really quick in college at Cornell. Cornell is obviously a very prestigious university. Computer science, like engineering, is very challenging. So it sounds like you were really, really exceeding and doing well in college. So I'm just curious, from like an educational standpoint, what, in terms of your background prior to college, what kind of prepared you to be so successful once you got to college? Maybe there's something that you did that other people can maybe duplicate.
Yeah, there's a few things, right, that I could tap into. One is just having, my parents value education. They came from, so I'm Caribbean. My dad's side of my family is from St. Thomas and my mom's side of the family is from Nevis. And so, they both came over to the States, and education was like that cornerstone, right? Like, go to school, you know, do well in school, they both have master degrees. Like, education was very important, even from day one when I didn't care about it. So I actually didn't really care
Mm.
about school and academics and science and all that stuff growing up, but I was always really good at math. Right? That was the common theme, was like, Dron's really good at math. Dron has some potential, but he just plays too much in class and doesn't really care. Um, it clicked for me in my junior year, where I stopped playing basketball and doing these other things, and just said, hey, like, let's see if there is something else out there for me that is built on like academics, like doing well in class. And so I would say that, having parents that value that growing up obviously helped. I would say that going to a high school, I went to an independent high school that didn't follow like the New York State Regent system and all these state tests. So I didn't get like hate school as much as I feel like my other friends who went to public schools did,
Yeah.
because we just had a slower pace. We didn't have midterms. It was just a different relationship I had with education. Um, and I think overall, like, my approach to going into college, in the way that I hope other students right now that are potentially going to college or in any kind of educational setting would do, is just really remember why you're there, and just remember that it's just for a time and season, but like, use that to fuel how you kind of approach the experience, right? I knew I was going to be there for 4 years. I knew
Mm.
that this could be the most impactful kind of like, you know, career defining moments of my life if I, do it correctly. So I came onto campus very motivated and dedicated to, going to office hours, talking to a bunch of I talked to so many seniors the first semester I got on campus, just to get the mentorship, just to get to hear about their struggles, their challenges, how they viewed college, especially the ones that were really successful. And I just took it very seriously. Like, I was just wasn't. I didn't come to play games. Like, I just wanted to go in and make the most of Cornell and all it had to offer. And I say that it's a simple thing, but I think a lot of people, rightfully so, I think you could justify it, going to college with a balanced view of the academics, career, and social, but maybe more in social in the earlier part. And that
Mm.
just wasn't me. Like, I was like, let me figure out the career and academic stuff first, because the social stuff is going to always be there. I'm not always going to be in school, right? So that commitment. I didn't do well at my first semester either academically. Like, I had to like, had a hiccup and I had to like get back on track. So it's not like it was perfect, but that commitment was there, right? To really kind of putting my education and career first.
Gotcha. One quick follow up. Have you already been exposed to like computer science and programming before getting to college, or was that like later on?
Yeah. Yeah, so I had first heard about coding as a thing in 11th grade
Mm-hmm.
of high school. So it wasn't like super early. Um, and then, so then that year I took like an intro to programming and into, I think, for intermediate programming. We didn't even write any code. It was like this, I think it was like Scratch. I don't know if folks have heard about
Yeah, I'm
Scratch,
not
but
familiar with that one.
it's like this block thing where you can, like, you have like an if statement, but it's like this physical block. Like, a lot of kids
Oh,
use it to learn,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like, it's a good learning tool. So we had like blocks, and you just like drag and drop the blocks and add pictures and, put numbers in it. It's interesting. It's called Scratch. It's made by MIT, I think. Um, so that was like the first year. And then the second year, which is my senior year, I took AP Computer Science, which, if you go to public school, or most schools are now offering it. So I took AP Computer Science and did well in that class. I got a 5 on the AP CS exam, and that's how I placed out of the intro course in college. But that wasn't easy either. Like, I had to ask so many, like, I was just a very curious person, and I really, really enjoyed this whole thing of coding. Like, it seemed so cool to me. And I spent so much time like asking questions, staying with the teacher, um, really trying to become the best that I could be. So that definitely, my journey becoming a CS student software engineer definitely started in that senior year, because I even outside of the class had this I was entrepreneurial, right? Regardless. So I had outside of the class, I had this idea to build this app that would help my dean at school. We had a chapel, and I was trying to like help him create the chapel seating chart, because he did it manually. Like,
Mm,
middle schoolers can't sit with high schoolers, but this class can't. They come out later, so you have to put them in front. Like, he did this manually for like, call it 600 students, and so I tried to
it's
like,
crazy.
yeah, like I tried to create something that would it like, I don't want to say it utterly failed. Like, it could work with the right parameters inputted. Like, it just wasn't made for all the edge cases, but like that was a really cool experience of like taking a problem and solving it with code, which I don't think a lot of students get to really capture in a class setting, because it's usually just like, oh, make this thing that'll do division, or make this thing that'll put these pixels here. And you don't really understand why that's helpful, or don't get excited about that, because it's not a problem that you want to solve. But when I applied the coding knowledge I had to a problem that I came across and I wanted to solve, and I built that software from the ground up, maybe view it a little bit in a better light. I was really excited to continue.
That's a good point about like the project-based learning, man. 'Cause I can't tell you how many times I may have
Yeah.
started like freecodecamp.org or like some other kind of like online like coding software. And it's like, okay, it's cool. You're learning something, but if you don't have like a project that you're passionate about, and not just that like you have to learn, like a lot of times it's just like you lose the motivation and the momentum, and then you may not be as inspired to continue learning. And so I think I think that's a good point that you made just in general for anybody who may be interested in
Yeah.
tech or anything else really.
And the one thing I'll add there too that helped me out was, I mean, I think it's boring, it's corny, it depends on where you go to school, but like, there are like, nobody spends time with their teachers. Like, it's always
That's
the corny
true.
thing to do,
Yeah.
right? It's always the corny, like, oh, why are you staying with, going to their extra help, or whatever the case may be, like, you're whatever. But I went to a very small school, so it was like 100 people per class, and we were very close to our teachers. So I had this one teacher, his name was Mr. Kennedy, and I literally, like, every day after school, I would just go to his room, and like we would just, he was like a STEM teacher. He taught the engineering class and ran a STEM camp, and he was just like one of the smarter people that I met just in life in general. And so he would help me. I started a business fixing phones in high school, and he would help me like just think about that. And then when I had this idea about the chapel seating algorithm, like, he was the one that kind of was helping me think about like how to actually craft the algorithm, and here are the things that I should think about. He wasn't a CS, he didn't have a CS background, but like having that teacher, that mentor, that advisor that you can just kind of like do life with really is helpful. So it doesn't have to be a teacher. I
Mhm.
just feel like school is an easy way to find somebody. But that was actually really helpful. Like, I spent so much time with him, and we figured out a lot of things together, right? It wasn't just like a one time come with this problem, he'll give me a solution. It was just ongoing relationship. And so as things came up, as I became more curious about things, we would just explore them together, which really helped.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Man, it sounds like mentoring is like the key to your success, like
Yeah.
in everything that you've done, like not even just the endeavors you personally pursue, but then like the things that you create, the communities and the environments, and then everything that you make, you factor in mentoring. It sounds like that's something that you really value and it really been beneficial for you.
Absolutely.
So real quick, so let's talk a little bit more about Colorstack and some of the like some of the actual like programs and resources that you guys provide. So let's say I'm a sophomore computer science major here in Houston. I find out about Colorstack. How can I sign up? And then if I get into the program, what can I expect to experience and learn as a part of the program?
Yeah. So if you are a computer science student that identifies as Black, Latinx, even Native American, at a 2 or 4 year institution, still actively in that program, basically you're in, right? The application process isn't too rigorous. We just try to really focus on a certain archetype of who we're trying to serve. So you apply, colorstack.org, you're in. Once you join, I'm going to talk about the ideal case because not everybody takes advantage of this, but this is what you should do. So you join, you get an invite from our community manager. You get an invite to onboard, which we really, really invest heavily in. This is a group onboarding session where you you hear from our community manager, you meet up to 4 other students that have onboarding at the same time. And you learn about Colorstack, you learn about each other, and you really just kind of kick off that experience, right? By showing you how to take advantage of Colorstack, right? The minute that even the day after, I guess, you join, right? You can sign up for one of those meetings. We also send you a swag pack if you actually do the meeting. So it's like a first kind of welcoming, right? Then what this member now has access to, you're officially a member once you get accepted. What this member has access to is a few things, but the list is growing. So the easiest thing is, the immediate thing is the Slack, right? You now, let's say you're like you said, a Black CS student. Let's say you're going to, I don't know, University of Houston, and you hypothetically are the only Black CS student in your department. Now, the minute you get into the Slack, you have access to 1,800 other Black and brown CS students at your fingertips. So
Wow.
whether that's asking them for help on the homework assignment, whether that's for asking them for a resume review, whether that's just trying to find other students, CS students, Black and brown CS students that like hip hop, like you can find your tribe very, very easily at this point, right? Mm-hmm. So that's at the bare minimum what you get access. And obviously opportunities, we send opportunities in our Slack a ton. So it's a very powerful kind of like core benefit. Then we do monthly events. So we'll have like keynote speakers. We'll have our partners come in and talk, do workshops. You can learn about iOS development. You can learn about, schedule like time management, a lot of mental health workshops. And we just bring the community together to learn and grow together every single month. So that's a monthly thing that you have access to, with also the benefit of recordings, right? So just a content library. Then we do, on top of the events, we do 2 career fairs every year where they're specifically for hiring. So we bring about 30 companies to this one event. They booth up. You can talk to the recruiters directly. They're here to hire Colorstack members. They do these big, workshops and sessions. And you can kick off your recruiting season and kind of your hiring journey with us and our partners. Do those twice a year, and that's coupled with a resume book that we send directly to these recruiters, and they speak very highly of that resume book being a very helpful way for them to target and reach out to Colorstack members of interest. What we're adding now is basically, given the successful fundraising that we've had in the past 2 years, we now have more capital to deploy in unique ways. So, for example, there's a platform called, do you remember ever using Chegg in school?
Yeah, bro, man. I can edit it out, but man, them textbooks were so expensive, bro. And they would always require like the new version. And so like when I went to school, like Chegg was just getting like really popular. And as soon as we did that, like that was a game changer. So yeah, I'm familiar with Chegg, but I know they got into like, they're doing a lot more now. So I'm interested to hear how you guys are working with them.
Yeah, so so for me in school, they help with textbooks for sure. They helped with textbooks, and then like essay writing, I think they also helped with. And then the key thing that I used it for was like, if a lot of students deal with this, if you have a professor that's using a textbook that maybe you don't have access to, where the textbook doesn't have answers to questions, and they like give you homework in that, and then you just get told if you're right or wrong, but you don't ever know what the answer is. That also kind of like hinders your learning experience, because if you didn't understand something and they're not telling you how to get to the answer or what the right answer was, that just compounds and you can't understand the next. It's just very, very, very annoying. So Chegg has been a very helpful tool for a lot of students to just do better in the classroom. There's another platform called Algo Expert that helps students prepare for technical interviews. The 30-minute, 45-minute coding interviews. And so what we're doing this year is purchasing licenses to these platforms on our students' behalf. So if you become a Colorstack member and you go to, I think the way we're doing is like attend at least one Fam Friday, or take these very easy steps.
Yeah.
and we'll pay for licenses on your behalf. So we're investing, upwards of $150,000 this upcoming year on just getting them these licenses to software that works, right? That'll help them do better in the classroom. That'll help them do better, in their careers. And we're continuing to add to that list. So you as a member, if you come in and you're like, hey, I need Quizlet, or there's another software tool that's helpful to me in academic or career related, we'll add that to the list and kind of build out a program for getting it to our members. So we're trying to build this kind of like toolkit of resources that we pay for on behalf of our members. We have to obviously be at a certain level of engagement to be eligible. But we want to allocate the resources in that way.
Yeah, man, that is amazing. I'll say that first and foremost, just like the amount of stuff that you guys are doing. I mean, like NSBE has kind of really set the bar, in my opinion, in terms of like STEM focused organizations that are working with diverse people. And like the big thing that they have is like the career fair, the conference that they have every year. And I mean, extremely beneficial. I know plenty of people that have gotten job offers from that, but all the other resources and tools that you guys are providing that will help people be successful throughout the school year, and then also build that sense of community. Like, that's just really impressive, really amazing. So you guys are like tackling the community problem, tackling the financial component, like, because some of these kids obviously don't have money to pay for licenses and what everything else requires. So I think y'all are doing an amazing job. That's really, really dope. I got a few follow-up questions for you. So like, one is like the monthly meetings you guys do. Is that like a virtual meeting, or is it like hey, we're going to be in DC this month, next month we're in Houston? How does that kind of work?
Yeah, good question. So we do it virtually, just because of when we launched in the middle of the pandemic, and that was a way to really give most students access. That's still true to this day, though, because we have a lot of members that are, like I said, one of a few on these very kind of widely spread campuses. So it's still more accessible to do that and give access to a student in some random school in Michigan or, Nevada or wherever they may be, to do that virtual kind of experience. We are investing. Nothing beats being in person, though, right? Like, true. 9 times out of 10, you might, and I don't know if you've done an in-person interview before, but like 9 times out of 10, you're going to more enjoy the in-person kind of one-on-one, seeing you, kind of being able to dap you up in the middle of the, like that. There's just a little bit more that you're going to get that you can't replace. So we are investing this year in 2 things. So three things. So one is summer events in the cities that a lot of our students are interning in. So Seattle, SF, and New York City will be trying to do a couple social events, so that students who regularly wouldn't be in the same place because of where they go to school might be there, all be in SF because they're interning at a few different tech companies based in the Bay. So we're going to do in-person events there. Then the second thing is we're going to go to the conferences that have already kind of set up shop. So Tapia, SHIP, NSBE. We're going to go to their national conventions and kind of create like a Colorstack at insert conference name experience where, we can kind of connect with students there and even hopefully help some students get out to the event if they weren't planning on going in the first place. And then the third thing is local chapters. So this is kind of what I built Colorstack and this whole initiative on, which was being on campus, developing that localized community, right? That isn't virtual, right? It's all about the people on your campus and kind of building community with them. Students still want that, right? Students still, if they can build that on their campus, they want to. So we're going to reinvest in kind of that strategy, launching chapters like on campuses that can actually support that around the country.
Nice. I love it, man. Yeah, you're doing a hell of a job. Like, I even like that going to NSBE and SHIP idea, because I think a lot of engineers that are like mechanical, chemical, whatever, or just people in general, like we get to a point in our career where we're going to want to pivot and shift. And I think like you guys being there in that setting will kind of like start planting those seeds early on. And maybe they're a chemical engineer, but maybe they have a skill set that they can apply to, I don't know, computer science or software engineering at Microsoft or whatever the case may be. So I think that's really dope. Or even project management, excuse me, even project management or whatever. So I think that's really cool. So Yeah, man, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So, man, let me ask you one quick question. I actually saw like a LinkedIn post that you did like earlier this week. I'm always on LinkedIn, you know, trying to find cool guests or whatever the case may be, connect with people.
Yep.
I saw a list that said a list of Colorstack sponsors included
Mm,
Y Combinator, Squarespace,
mm,
JP Morgan, Jane Street, Twilio, Roblox, Datadog, Confluent,
yep.
McKinsey and Co., Bloomberg, I think Point 72. So man, there's a lot
Mm,
of really well-known companies on there. And so
yep.
obviously everything that you're doing requires money, and you're doing a
Yep.
hell of a job like getting people on board to really buy in what you're believing in. I meet entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders and leaders who are trying to get people to buy into their mission and support them. What do you think that you has been really critical in helping you find success with getting people to buy in and support the mission and the dream that you have?
Yeah, I think wow, this is an interesting one too because I think about this a lot. And you have to like me and anybody who finds success has to like dissect where there were kind of privileges and where there were things that can't I don't want to say can't, but that that you didn't do on your own, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I kind of try to think about that as I, give advice and like speak about, my success kind of in this space. So very early on, there's a few things that helped me here, right? So like being a computer science student myself, right? If you think about it, a lot of these companies I was applying to in college. So I actually knew these recruiters. These recruiters were, I was a highly sought after candidate. So a lot of these recruiters were actually recruiting me. I turned down their offers. Like they, loved me in their processes, wanted to hire me. So when I come back in a year or two and say, hey, I'm building a nonprofit that'll help you find more me's in the world, it's very, they're already kind of sold on me, right? And so
Yeah.
it's very easy to get that early support because people kind of want to work with you already for different reasons, right? So when you kind of bring up something new, it's more likely that they're interested. I also in high school, in college, got into this program called NEO. It's a program that tries to find the cohorts of the top, most promising CS students in the country. So I was in their third cohort, 9 students. And the way they run it is they get a cohort of students every year. They put us in community with tech veterans. So, for example, the only way I met the founder of DevColor was through Neo. My first fundraising check was from a tech VP at Microsoft. I think she was like the first female tech lead or something like that. And she wrote our first check. So, like, that's another thing that program that I got into that opened up this network to me at a very, very early point in my career, right? Like, that was a huge accelerant. So Neo, I mean, they are responsible for 80 to 90% of just my personal success in general and the people that I've met and the relationships that I've been able to work with. So for example, like there was this one company that I was trying to work with. I won't name names because we still work with them to this day, but they originally were just moving slow and not working with me, but their CEO is in Neo. And so I asked to get an introduction to him and I emailed him like, hey, trying to work with you guys. It's not moving anywhere. And then he kind of does this like chain of command, like, hey, can we move forward on this? Like, can we speed this up, whatever, to that same team that wouldn't respond to my emails. And then we got a partnership, right? Like, so I guess the lesson here, right? The thing that I would like to say I do well is like just general networking and putting myself out there, right? Because even getting into Neo, it was outreach. Like the recruiting team for Neo at that time had been looking and doing LinkedIn searches. And as you even have seen, I post a lot on LinkedIn. A lot of students don't even make a LinkedIn until their junior year. But how are you
Yeah.
going to get discovered, right? Like even you said it, you look for podcast guests through LinkedIn and through what people are putting out there in the world. And so I invested in that very early on, so that I can build this set of mentors and advisors and just this network that I can tap into over time. Because that's the way that you're going to, for the customer, you got to think about it from the customer's perspective, right? Like if somebody's going to invest in you or purchase your product, your goal is to like de-risk that decision, right? Like everybody has a risk profile, but the less risky it feels, the better, right? So if you're a company that's partnered with, call it some other nonprofit for years, and you're considering doing new partnership with Colorstack, my goal is to make that not seem risky to them, right? And one way of doing that is them feeling comfortable supporting me as a person. That's one way of doing that. And that can happen through working with people on different projects and kind of just building your personal relationship with them. That can happen through getting warm introductions from other people. So a lot of the people that I meet, I don't try to do cold outreach to everybody. I try to just double down on the relationships I have to get more introductions to other people. Because those strong introductions, what'll end up happening is that they'll introduce you to someone else, and that person will say, "Hey, a friend of a friend of Andrew's a friend of mine, right? And I'll do anything, for you, or whatever you need because I know Andrew, right?" And
Yeah.
that happens a lot, right? And so for me, I think the lesson is definitely about building your personal brand, building your network in a way that gets people to trust you earlier, even if you might fail, and that's okay. But it's so much easier to sell and get that support in the early days.
Hey man, that is like really, really valuable. I really hope people take away a lot of what, or all of what you just said, because that de-risking component is really, really big. You've been able to get people to invest millions of dollars in what you're building, and you really have to be able to make people feel comfortable, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
in order to say, hey, I'm going to write this $1 million check or this $500,000 check or even $10,000 check, whatever it is. That's money that they could be spending somewhere else. And they want to make sure that money is actually going to give them a return on investment. So, man, I think you're killing it in terms of mastering networking, and then also, like you said, doubling down on those meaningful relationships. And those people that you really bond with, man, they'll go run through a wall for you and everything like that. Exactly. Versus like the little soft connections you may have just made on LinkedIn yesterday or in person in passing yesterday. So really, really key there. And I hope, man, that we'll start to see more, especially Black and Latino college students getting on LinkedIn earlier.
Yeah.
I've started to pivot into the recruiting space. I don't want to go too heavy into it, but I'm on LinkedIn all the time looking for candidates. That's how I'm finding people. That's how I'm sourcing people. And it just makes it so much easier if you're on the platform and people can type in software engineer Houston, and they see specifically if they're looking for Black and Latino people to help diversify their company, you need to be on the platform, and that way you can hopefully get a seat at the table. So a lot of great advice, man.
And there's two things that I'll also just conclude there too. Like, to your point, like the LinkedIn is super helpful. Like, make a LinkedIn, keep it up to date, put your keywords in there that you want people to look for you for, and post. Like, I remember my first post I remember was I watched Black Panther and just reposted this article that's talked about what was her name, Shuri, or is like little sister.
Shuri or Zuri. Yeah, I know you're talking about.
I forgot the exact name, but I just posted like, "Oh, this is super cool, like really big for representation." Like something super simple, like just commenting on another article that somebody else wrote. And over time, I would share things, like I would shout other people out that helped me. You can kind of figure out what your lane is in terms of content. Like maybe it's just sharing articles that you find interesting. Maybe it's like learning in public and saying, "Hey, I'm really trying to figure out this one thing. I've been looking at this resource. Does anybody have any help? Can anybody give me any help or point me in the right direction?" Like the more people see you and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. So I mean, I definitely would just double down on just recommend on suggesting creating a LinkedIn and just trying to build some level of content so people see it. And the second thing I would say, there's a lot of people, let's say you have a network now, right? Or you're starting to network. How do you navigate that? A lot of people make the mistake of like trying to change the minds of the non-believers and spending more time doing that than further cultivating and growing the relationship with the people who already get it. And so I don't spend much time with people who don't get it. Like the moment I realize that you don't get it, I've already like we could be in a 30-minute meeting, and 5 minutes in I'll know if you get it or not, and I'll already know if I'm going to follow up with you or not, right? And so I don't do the whole follow up and then try to get another meeting so I explain it differently. And, oh, please, can I just get one more time? I think I didn't, explain it right. Like, I don't do
Yeah.
that chasing. I just, after that, I go back to the person who did believe and like talk to them about it. And then I ask them, like, is there another person that we could talk? Like, just double down on the people who already believe. And that goes for customers, that goes for investors, advisors. Like, that's one thing not to kind of continue to remind myself when faced with like a no. Because it's very easy to make that, feel discouraging. So you reach out to somebody, they don't answer. It's very easy to kind of go down the path of like viewing them as the perfect connection and trying to like follow up. But my philosophy is that if you got somebody that believes in you, that can open up a network that you wouldn't even have to really work for. So just make sure they continue to believe in you, ask them to make introductions, and move on to the next. Like, I think that has been super helpful for me.
Yeah, bro. Man, you definitely wise beyond your years, man. You remind me of Gary Vee. How you know him?
Gary, yeah. I
Yeah,
read his
yeah.
book, Crushing in college.
Yeah, man. So it's like he's kind of like the same way. Like, why are you spending time like begging and pleading somebody to like give you an opportunity when you could be spending time and investing your time and efforts into somebody that believes it and buys into it? And
Yep.
so I'm with that 100%, man. It's so easy. I mean, I think a lot of times we kind of build it up in our head like, oh man, they're the VP of whatever at this Fortune 500 company. If I could get them, that would save the day. But I think we got to remember, like, I think it's like the laws of like 6 degrees of separation or something like that. And like, you can get to anybody in this world through 6 different connections. And so we just got to keep that in mind. And like, hey, just double down on who you know. And that'll, like you said, that'll open up all kinds of doors for you.
I also, I'm sorry, you just bringing up things that
Nah,
like
go ahead,
I've
man. Take
also
it. That's
thought,
why we
like I've
here.
thought through. Your point about the whole like VP thing too is actually another thing that I talk about a lot, right?
Yeah.
When you're getting mentorship, so I fell into this. So I got a lot of, so being a neo, networking. Now I have these people, like you said, VPs, CTOs, other founders that I'm getting access to and talking to, getting advice from. I
Ooh.
want people to stay to get very like it's hard, right? Because you look up to these people, but I'll say that not everybody is equipped to advise you and mentor you. What happens is there's a lot of people out there that are regretful and they don't listen, and you're gonna like ask them a question like what you should do with your career, and what they're gonna do is speak to a younger version of themselves. They are not going to listen to you, really hear out your situation, and give you authentic, genuine advice. Most of the time, and I'm not saying everybody does. I'm saying that there are people out there that aren't prepared to give advice because they're so regretful or like they're like, oh, I should have done this. So anytime they talk to someone younger, they're just going to say the same thing that they think they should have done, right? The example is when I was starting Colorstack, I was talking to a lot of engineering leaders and D&I folks, and not this wasn't everybody who was saying this, but there was a group of people who kept telling me, "Don't start Colorstack. Don't go into this work. Go into, become an engineer. Do you're very talented. Like go become some PM, VP. Like do a 10, 15 years in industry, and then after that you can start giving back." And like if you really listen to me 3, 4, 5 years ago, you would have understood that that is not me. Like I fundamentally want to help people and I fundamentally care about this problem. So if you actually listened to me, you wouldn't give me that advice unless I was really, really going in the wrong direction. Right. And so I got burned and kind of honestly my feelings hurt sometimes when I like had this person who I really looked up to steer me in the direction that I knew I didn't want to go in. And it seemed like they really weren't listening to me. So that's just, I mean, you brought up the whole VP thing. And I actually care a lot about that a lot because a lot of students will take their word as Bible, as scripture, and really just not, like make the wrong decisions and just not do what they know they should be doing because of that person's title. Right. So I think making sure that the people that you're looking to for advice are actually listening to you. You can feel that too. You can feel when they might be saying something that like doesn't seem like they were actually listening. So like just be careful about that. and really try to like vet out the advice and take it all with a grain of salt, I guess is my main point. And I guess also like strategically reaching out to people. Like just because somebody's a CEO of a company doesn't mean they're going to be able to help you, right? Like you might be better off talking to, if you're trying to be a software engineer, talking to another software engineer, right? Like someone who's 2 steps ahead of you. Like that might be better than talking to the VP of engineering at LinkedIn. Like I don't think they're going to have much helpful advice because they're so far removed from where you are. So I can go on for hours talking about that. So sorry, but like
No,
was
man.
another thing that I dealt with.
That's really important though, because I mean, I think like as people get to know us, they kind of develop a vision of what our future should look like for them. Like they come up with their own idea of like what you should do, and that oftentimes doesn't align with like what our own personal passion and our mission and purpose is. And I mean, I've kind of fallen into that trap as well. Like I kind of delayed, this podcast wasn't even in my mind, but giving back was something that I delayed because of, hey, like people said you should go off in the industry, become hyper successful, super duper successful, get awards, patents, all this other stuff, and then go create a nonprofit. That's the formula. That's that they give you. But you don't have to live by somebody else's like rules and guidelines that they set for your life. And I mean, think about like if you didn't do this and you were like some project manager at like Apple or Microsoft or software engineer, like how many less Black and Latino computer scientists or software engineers will be in the workforce. So I mean, it's amazing. It's really, the point that you brought up is really important, that people should really keep that in mind, that we kind of going back to Gary Vee, we come up with this idea in our head of like what our future should look like at a certain age and what like boxes we should check by a certain age. But we really need to like really dig deep and double down on like what we're passionate about and what our God-given purpose is in this world. And if you don't know that, you can talk to people, reach out and try different things and try to figure that out. So yeah, man, we could go on this for like, I could do another hour on this stuff for long, man, for sure. Hey man, let me so I mentioned some of the sponsors that you had. Let me get you to brag a little bit. How much money have we been able to raise for Colorstack since its inception?
So that, I think the article you were referencing too was one of our founding sponsors. So one of our first posts about it. So that was the first year was 12 companies. This year we're upwards already of 50. And so to date, we've raised, I had to check this for an event I was doing recently. We've raised a little bit over $2.5 million. So this is money that comes from these corporate partnerships. This is money mostly from the corporate partnerships. We also obviously get grants and donations as well. But yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you told me to brag a little, so I got to tell a story. We got an accountant, right? Just because, you just need an accountant to run business. And we were doing, so a couple things happened. So the first accountant told us, hey, you guys made, she didn't say like too much money, but like she said, you raised so much money in your first year. I've never seen this. She works with other nonprofits. She was like, you've already in the first year triggered the audit requirement. Like New York State, like you have to get audited as a nonprofit if you do more than $750,000 in a year. And she was like, oh crap. Like I've never worked with a nonprofit that triggered that in year one. And then we went then we got audited, and the auditing firm was like, well, you guys are a nonprofit and this is how much you raised in the first, like, it was just like, they were just so shocked, right? Especially being in nonprofit space. So we're blessed, man. Like it's been an amazing ride. Like we have such great support behind us. Especially my team, right? Like it's not just me out here. It's like, I have a team of 5 other full-time employees that are helping us do the work. So it's been great. But yeah, a lot of people were shocked in the early days of like, just that financial fundraising success.
Gotcha. Yeah, man, that's amazing. And you got at least 2.5 million reasons to have an accountant. So I'm glad you do have one. And yeah, man, I'm gonna keep rooting for you guys' success. So keep it up. And I know you guys will keep running up the score. So I'm looking forward to that and how it's going to impact people's lives for the better.
Thank you.
So real quick, you talked about like your team, having a good team behind you. You're a nonprofit officially, but like you're, to me, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times the difference between nonprofit and for-profit is just like the mission behind it, or like what is your like your bottom line is it like generating revenue, or is it like solving a problem and like making the world a better place? So I kind of think some of the advice and some of the experience that you've taken from the nonprofit world in terms of team building and building a sense of community, it could be transferable to the for-profit world. And so what has kind of helped you be successful with building a team? What have you kind of looked for and helped you be like, okay, so-and-so is going to be a great value add, or no, that's not going to be a good fit?
Yeah, for sure. And first, I want to just clarify for people too. I think a lot of people misunderstand nonprofits generally. Like, yes, it's nonprofit. You can, so Girl Scouts, like they sell cookies, right? It's a nonprofit, but they sell cookies. They can have a business, right? It just means that you can't, there's no shareholders that are entitled to the profits of the business. Like nobody owns the business's assets. Right. You can have, like, we have cash sitting, waiting to be deployed. Like you can have a profit on paper. But the goal is to like move that and invest it in your mission, like you said. So just wanted to clarify that. Like we have a business model. We don't rely only on donations. Kind of wanted to, so we can, basically what I'm trying to say is that we can afford to hire people. I think a lot of people think that they have to like take no salary if they go into nonprofit. So definitely reach out if you're interested in working at Colorstack. But so to the point of like team building, this has actually been huge. So my dad's an HR professional, and so I've experienced growing up just the importance of like talent management, HR. Like I didn't think it was gonna be that as important that it is today, but it's I've gotten more advice from my dad than I ever expected. He's not technical at all, right? Like I didn't think that studying CS, being a founder, I wasn't getting much advice from him, but like so much of this world is like building teams and working with people, which is mostly misunderstood. I think people think that they can work on product and do speaking engagements all the time. And it's like, no, no, you have to hire, fire, like all these like people, challenges. And so building a team for me has been an interesting process. Just like, I think that's just the best way I can put it right now, because it hasn't been, normal, conventional at all. So starting out, it was just me. Immediately, I realized that I couldn't do it myself. So I hit up a friend of mine from school, Angie, who had worked on the club that I built at Cornell as my event coordinator back then. So I was like, all right, I already know what she's capable of. She's not doing too much this summer. Can you just spend 20 hours a week with me? She was like, dope. Okay, cool. Angie's there.
Nice.
Then I was like, oh crap. Like I also hate like the program development, and there's a bunch of like, especially like talking to this accountant now, where like there's a bunch of operational stuff, like registering in states to like pay people and all this like back office stuff. Like I don't like doing that. And I also don't like running programs. Okay, I hired a program manager and an operations manager, but I did that as an open application. Like I literally just put it out there, LinkedIn, saw what would happen. The operations manager that I hired, and he's been, one of the best hires that I made. All my employees are great, but like we all know, Caleb is the guy. And he actually found the role because this woman that I interned with at Google saw the posting, shared it with her mentor at Google, and her mentor is his wife. It was like the craziest like path of him discovering it, because he's like an actor by trade. He worked at Trader Joe's. Like he wasn't supposed to find that role, but he ended up in this very, very specific way finding the role, applying, clearly stood out as the best applicant, and joined. And I hired another program manager, became our director of programs. She's no longer at the company, but she really helped the foundation of a lot of our programs. Hired my best friend from middle school that I've known since I was 11 to be in partnerships. Another friend of mine from school to be community manager, and then another kind of open random application from my marketing manager who lives in Arkansas. So like I have this like I said, it's a very interesting path I have with hiring, because I've hired friends, I've hired like looser connections of people I just kind of knew, and I've hired random people from the wildest corners of the world that I did not expect to come across. So yeah, that's just kind of been my journey. But like I've had to learn a lot about how to evaluate people, before you even meet them and work with them. I had to learn a lot about like getting people motivated and also just aligned on like, okay, what does performance look like in your role? I had to get an executive coach to become a better leader, right? To kind of get over any deficiencies or like, challenges that I have personally in the way that I lead. So, team building, I took talk about that for hours. I think you can't get around it. The stronger your team, the more successful your business. I think like that's just like period, full stop. You can't get around that. So I have a lot to say on that, but yeah, team building is key.
Yeah. No, that's all great advice, man. And even I like the part about the coaching. Like I was kind of curious about that because I think sometimes
Yeah.
we kind of find ourselves in roles that we didn't imagine, right? Like you went to
Yeah.
school for computer science, but now you're leading like multi-million-dollar nonprofit, and it's like, okay, I'm sure a lot of this stuff you figure out on the fly, but
Yeah.
getting that coaching is probably really important. Is that something that you, and not only you but your team members as well, kind of seek out, like coaching and training to help them fulfill their jobs successfully?
Yeah. So for me, I invested in having a coach myself. We do a lot of kind of like group coaching throughout the year
Mm-hmm.
from a few different firms that we work with to kind of do sessions around giving feedback or how do we bring our full selves to work or different things like that. So coaching has been huge for me, and I think the team as a whole, I try to attract people who are committed to growing and admitting that they don't know it all, right? Because I fundamentally believe the same. So like you said, like everything I've done as a CEO has been for the first time, right? And so I've had to fundamentally admit that I do not know what I'm doing in a way that's not like I'm not capable of doing it. It's just that I should be asking questions and trying to learn. So our culture is really built on that, and also being able to learn from people that aren't coaches. Like I fundamentally believe that everybody has something to bring to the table. So we have a very collaborative environment where even if you're not the community manager, you can still bring in ideas that the community manager will leverage because of your lived experience, right? It doesn't have to be your competency. I think everybody has something to say, and it can kind of further inspire other ideas. So definitely have a culture of like coaching and kind of growing in our careers.
Awesome, man. How many years has Colorstack been around?
We'll turn 2 in 5 days.
All right. Okay. So
Yeah.
this will probably come out after that. So I'll definitely say congratulations now. Really big
Yeah, sounds
accomplishment.
good. Thank you.
Two years in and killing it already. So I'm really excited for where you guys are going in the future.
Thank you.
So earlier when we first met via FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, we talked about not only your success at Colorstack, but also about the fact of like that you're also a angel investor. And so you're
Yeah.
kind of in the BC world as well. So I just had a couple of questions for you real quick. Just kind of want to pick your brain. Here in Houston, I work at a co-working space. I've been more involved in like the entrepreneurship innovation center here in Houston, and so a big part of the discussions that I have with people a lot of times or with aspiring entrepreneurs is trying to raise capital, trying to find a VC investor or an angel investor. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are trying to secure investments from people?
Yeah, I think it's just a very backwards world where like the people who think they need in how do I put this? People who think they need money, like investment, probably need to work on their product. And the people who need to like work on their product, kind of scale it and build it more, probably just need some more money to kind of put fuel in that fire. I don't know if that's like that's like me just coming up with it on the fly, but I think like investment, money, capital is a means to an end, right? And so I think starting a business, unless you're like starting like a lending business or like, very capital intensive business that needs like certain assets and buildings and things like that, starting it with the mindset of like, I need money is flawed. Unless you like genuinely don't have any money, like unless you literally have $0, then I don't think you should start with that mindset, right? don't leave your job, right? I wasn't going to start Colorstack until I secured the funding. Like I wasn't going to do it with just no money. So if I didn't secure funding, I would have been at Google and we would have been talking still about Colorstack, but it would just been, I've been talking to you about it as like, it's a side project, right?
Yeah.
So very different world. Like, so I think, try your best to use the free tools out there. I mean, Colorstack was built on Slack, Airtable, and like Squarespace. You can use Slack for free. Airtable has a free trial. Squarespace, maybe $12 a month, get your domain. Like the first $500,000 to $1 million that we raised and just the success that we had for like on the student side as well was all just off of those 3 platforms and like Google Suite, which is basically free, right?
Yeah.
Like you can do a lot with less than $1,000. So going out there and trying to raise $100,000 to do what? I don't know. Like, I don't think I think try to use these tools, try to prove that you are providing value to someone, try to prove some hypothesis so you can go to someone who has capital and say, hey, okay, we proved that this type of person has this type of problem and here's how we're going to solve it. Can you give us about $75,000 so that we can test if this solution is correct? And then we'll come back to you later for more. Like, that's the way you should be viewing fundraising. Not, okay, I have an idea, I gotta go raise $1 million. Like that. I think a lot of people kind of are backwards in that.
Yeah, I think it might be attributed to like Shark Tank and everything like that. Like everything becomes so sensationalized, and it's like, I need $1 million to like hire a dev team and build like super expensive prototypes. But I like that idea of like just leveraging the resources you have. Like everything you mentioned is like, even if you just have a part-time job, you can probably afford that in addition to whatever living expenses you have. So I definitely like that advice. Few other questions. So for the investments that you might have made, what kind of distinguish those people, those entrepreneurs from the ones that you turned down? Was there like a similar characteristic, or was it just a kind of a combination of the things that you kind of outlined that they proved that, hey, this is a need, a demand, and then from there?
Yeah. So I'm trying to come up with, over time, I'm going to have a better succinct way to say this, but I think there are 3 key things I look for. One is, are you actually have you convinced me that you're solving a problem? Is like, we got to start there. Like if you're just like building a Web3 startup to build a Web3 startup, I don't want to speak to you, right? Because like businesses have to be like we're getting into this kind of contractionary period in the markets. I think a lot of companies are like, hey, we actually have to be profitable, and it's like we're realizing that like what a business is. And so if you're not solving a problem for a real person in the world, like if you haven't convinced me of that, we can't even have a second meeting. The second thing I look for is, are you learning? Are you flexible? A lot of people, will say, hey, I want to build this app. Like they're so focused on their idea or their solution that I try to, vet and weed out if this person is open to that solution changing. Because for example, like Airbnb and these other startups didn't start with what they are today, right? Like they just started by, I think Airbnb was like, let's make it easier for people who are going to design conferences to have a place to stay. Like it was super specific, right? And over time, they learned new things. Maybe we shouldn't do these types of conferences. Maybe we shouldn't do these types of cities. Like they just learned more and iterated over time. So if I try to gauge, and I'll do this in different ways, but if you're someone who isn't like coachable or isn't like humble and like you think you know everything and you're not gonna listen to customers or listen to even other people on your team, I don't think you'll be great to lead an organization, let alone building a successful startup, which is a super high failure rate. And then the third thing is, are you a builder? Like, can you actually, like people can have great ideas, but can you actually execute on that, right?
Yeah.
So, you could have evaluated 4 other people that had the same idea of Colorstack, but like if they weren't CS students themselves, or if they hadn't built a club like I did on campus, or weren't a product manager at Google, or, like you have to, I'm looking for someone who has a background of building things, right? Can you execute? So those are the 3 things. So demonstrating that is helpful. And if you don't have that experience, you should get that experience, right? You're not going to convince me this is going to be the first time that you're going to do it. It's going to be successful. If you've never built anything, you're not going to just learn and be perfect the first time. So, start a little blog or start a little Instagram page or create a newsletter or throw an event. Doing events or start a podcast. These things are not easy. So build something, right? Because that's the track record I'm kind of looking for, because startups are hard, right? An idea is easy.
Yeah, man, I think that's really big. Everybody has like $1 billion idea. Like, I swear, like it doesn't matter if they're like legitimately trying to bring the idea to fruition or if they're just like talking over a beer. Like, everybody has $1 billion idea, but what separates us is the ability to like bring that to life. Like, that was determined if you're like a Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, or anybody else versus like just somebody with an idea. So, yeah, man, and even like. I like what you guys did, like Slack, Squarespace, Airtable, like get a proof of concept and show that, hey, there's a demand here. Customer discovery obviously is really big. So showing like, hey, people want this, they need this, and being resourceful at the same time. So really dope. Man, I could talk to you for a whole nother hour, but like we're already like, I'm like already behind schedule, but it's cool, man. Like this is all good. Like it's really beneficial. But one of like the big questions that we like to ask each and every guest that we have on the show is pertaining to like increasing diversity within STEM, or in your case specifically like within tech. So you're obviously like building a community, building a platform that is focused hyperly on increasing the Black and Latino population of computer scientists or software engineers. But in your opinion, if there's like one thing that you could see, like if there's like a silver bullet, or if you had like an infinity gauntlet and at the snap of the finger, you could do something, change something, create something that would get more of us into tech, what would that be? What would that solution be, in your opinion?
Wow. One thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a loaded question, but I mean, if you got more than one, like we can do a 1A, 1B or whatever, but yeah.
I mean, I think if there was one thing that underpins a lot of the problems, like actually putting, like either giving all Black and brown kind of people who are interested, students who are interested in like high school and pursuing computer science or anything, like if you just either gave them the amount of money that they needed to kind of do that without any decision, like without any trade-offs, like by that I mean like going to some other school versus the one they actually wanted to go to, or having to drop out after their second year because of financial reasons, like either giving them the money or reducing all the costs, like either one works. Like, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of the reasons that people will go to a school that maybe isn't like, I feel like more people will probably go to HBCU. Like I feel like there's certain dynamics that happen when they choose what college they're going to, and it had like a lot of the time the root thing was a money thing. Like the reason they chose a certain school was a money thing. The reason they dropped out of school and transferred was a money thing. The reason they started at a 2-year was a money thing. Like it always comes down at some level to money. So I think that could actually solve a lot of problems by itself, if I had to pick one thing.
Yeah, no, man, and that makes sense. Like everything really at the end of the day comes down to money, right? Like, like you're saying, like college, are you going to go here or there? Like, do you have financial aid? Do you have scholarships? So, I mean, that's a really huge component of it. So that makes perfect sense. Hey, so real quick, like what's kind of your, and this might be the last question, I'm not going to commit to that, but what's kind of your, it's always hard to like end these things. So I have like so many questions. But this might be a good potentially closing question. What's kind of your long-term vision for Colorstack? Like, where do you see yourself Colorstack in like 5 years from now?
Yeah, 5 years. I mean, it's a lot of time. That's the thing. Like, I feel like there's so much we can accomplish. Like, I think the way that the world should look in 5 years, if we do what we say we're going to do, is that every student, every Black or brown student that wants to study computer science in college will at least know about Colorstack. I think more on the 10-year, I think the statement's a little bit different. I think on the 5-year, it's at least that awareness, right? Like at least you know, if you are struggling or you whatever, you know that Colorstack is there for you. And that comes a lot of other things of like how we get there in terms of, reach and stuff like that. But I really do believe that we're getting the word out much faster than we're actually proving our impact, which is like completely fine. So I want to continue that. Like if we can get people to at least know we exist, it's easier to like start there and then actually provide resources and deliver on what we say we're going to do. So I think within 5 years, like we can do something on that scale. And then in the 10 years, I would love if every Black or Latino computer science student in the country is a Colorstack member, like just period. Right. And there'll be different levels of engagement where some people are going to need more hands-on experiences. Some people are going to need less things that can just be on a newsletter. But I want every single one to be a member, right? That's how we create that large membership organization like the NSBE, like the SHIPs of the world.
Gotcha. Hey, one quick follow-up to that. So you guys are doing a great job at like retention and providing resources like once they're in there. For the people that don't really think they want to do tech or computer science, like why should it, like why is it important for like some 17, 18-year-old Black kid or Latino kid to even pursue computer science or tech?
I mean, if you want the easier answer is a lot of money. If I can't convince you that it's cool and you're listening to this, I think there was some study that was done that was like, if you, I'm going to get too, mathy here, but like if you talk about probabilities and like expected value, like you just multiply the probability of you doing it by the actual outcomes. Like probability of becoming a NBA player is very low, but if you do, you can get paid a lot. But if you just multiply the probability by the amount that you could get, it's like still like a very low expected value, right? But you can much more likely become a software engineer, work at a startup, and make $3 million if that startup goes in IPOs. You can much more likely, even on a smaller scale, get a job out of college that pays you $200,000, right? Like that's one thing you can think. If you're thinking about money and being successful and taking your parent and your family, out of the situation you grew up in, if that's your angle, there's definitely a much higher probability outcome here where you can make a decent amount of money. The second thing I would say, if that's not your motivator, which I don't think it should be, unless you really, unless it has to be, it is just genuinely like a fundamental, studying computer science gives you this fundamental view of the world and approach to solving problems that I haven't seen you can get anywhere else in any other kind of. I think most engineering majors actually can do this, but computer science for sure. The way you have to learn about coding and how dumb a computer can be and how specific you have to be and like solving a problem as simple as addition, like you just look at other problems differently. So even if you go off and you go into marketing, like my little brother is going to go to Syracuse and study film and like videography, but I want him to still. He took AP Computer Science Principles right now. He's taking that right now, and I'm going to try to convince him to get a CS minor at least, because I just think that will just help you become a better problem solver. So whatever industry you go into, you could do some other major, but minor in CS, because I think it'll fundamentally change the way that you think about problems.
Got it. I love it. Yeah, man, I'm on board with that. Looking back, I'm kicking myself for not minoring in CS, just because you can literally write your check anywhere, right? Write your own check for any opportunity, any job. And I mean, every company is now a tech company in some sense. So I love that, man. So, bro, I'm not going to hold you too much longer, man. I appreciate you.
This was fun, man. This was fun.
Yeah. So we do, when we close it out, we always like to give you guys the opportunity to shout out anything or anyone, or in your case, even just tell the audience about how they can find Colorstack if they're a college student and all that good stuff. So take it away, man.
Yeah, so colorstack.org, very easiest way to find out more information about us. For me, if you want to kind of keep up to date with what I'm up to, at Jehron P, JEHRONP on Twitter. That's my most active social media platform. I definitely want to shout out the Colorstack team. We're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. Couldn't do this without them. I want to shout out Mr. Kennedy, the high school teacher I mentioned, because I haven't talked about him as much on podcasts that I've been doing, but I made sure I included him on this one because he has been fundamental to my success. So yeah, very, very thankful for all the people out there that have been supporting us, all of our members, and all of our partners.
Awesome, man. Yeah, shout out Mr. Kennedy, man. Like the the,
There you go.
the K through 12 teachers don't always get enough love. They sure enough don't get
Yeah.
enough pay. So I mean, we got to show them
Yeah,
love when we can.
exactly.
So that's dope, man. Yeah, bro. Like this has been a pleasure. I enjoyed myself a lot. Like, if you ever got anything you want to shout out or announce or whatever, feel free. You got an open door here. We'll be
Amazing.
rooting for you, champion your success.
I'll come out to Houston when I can.
Yeah, I saw you did an internship out here, man. I did some LinkedIn
Yeah.
research, so you know the city.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly.
let me know when you come back, bro. We will link up, see what we can do.
Sounds good.
But yeah, man. So for the audience, we appreciate you guys watching. If you haven't yet, why have you not subscribed? So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. You can also check us out on all audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. And you can find us on IG, Twitter at cuSTEM Journeys. That's at CUSTEM Journeys, JOURNEYS. I'm Andrew Baines. Had a heck of a time interviewing Jehron Petty. Man, best of luck, and thank you guys for watching. Take care.